My name is Claire Donovan. I'm 40 years old, and the night my own family handed my 12-year-old daughter a stale packaged sandwich while their children celebrated with gourmet dinners, I finally stopped protecting the people who had spent half my life teaching us exactly where we belonged. "We didn't include your daughter in the dinner package," my older brother said with a casual shrug, sliding the wrapped sandwich across the polished oak table as if he were doing us a favor. His two sons were debating whether to order lobster tails or dry-aged ribeye. My mother smiled politely at the waiter. "She's young," she said. "She won't notice the difference." I looked at my daughter. She noticed. She quietly folded the blue ribbon she had won only an hour earlier and placed it inside her backpack before anyone could spill food on it. That ribbon was the entire reason we were sitting in that private dining room. Just 45 minutes earlier, she had been recognized by the National Clean Water Foundation for designing a portable water purification device that could provide safe drinking water to rural communities after floods. Out of more than 800 student projects submitted across the country, hers had been selected as the overall winner. Yet somehow, our family had managed to turn the celebration into another ceremony honoring themselves. I smiled at my brother. "Understood," I said. He mistook my calm voice for surrender. He had no idea I had spent the previous 5 months quietly examining every financial record connected to Donovan Environmental Solutions, the engineering company he believed he would inherit before the year was over. He also had no idea what rested inside the dark leather portfolio beneath my chair, or why 3 members of our company's board had just arrived downstairs. When the waiter returned and apologized for the confusion, asking whether he should remove the untouched place setting beside my daughter, I stood, lifted my glass, and said, "Please leave it exactly where it is." The conversations around us slowed. My brother frowned. Before anyone could ask why, I smiled toward the doorway. "Before dessert," I said calmly, "there's something everyone here deserves to hear." The room became completely silent. Before I tell you what happened after my brother realized he'd humiliated the one person who knew every secret he'd spent years burying, tell me where you're watching from. I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel. The dinner was being held inside the newly restored Riverside Exchange Hall, a century-old waterfront warehouse that our family's engineering company had transformed into one of the city's most prestigious event venues. Donovan Environmental Solutions had overseen the entire restoration project. My brother, Nathan Donovan, made certain everyone knew it. His photograph appeared throughout the event program. Guests congratulated him every few minutes. Developers shook his hand. Local officials praised his leadership. Nathan accepted every compliment as though he'd built the place with his own hands. What almost nobody in that room knew was that my father had quietly asked me to review the project's financial records 3 months earlier, after several government auditors questioned unusual increases in construction costs. Nathan assumed I was simply helping organize archived paperwork before the company's annual shareholder meeting. He never imagined my preliminary findings already filled hundreds of pages. My profession made overlooking details impossible. After leaving the family company years ago, I built my own career as a corporate compliance investigator. When investors suspected fraud, when public agencies questioned missing funds, when companies needed someone willing to uncover uncomfortable truths, they hired me. My job wasn't to accuse people. My job was to follow evidence wherever it led. Unfortunately for Nathan, the evidence kept leading back to him. Earlier that afternoon, my daughter, Emma, stood on the auditorium stage holding her award while nearly 1,000 people applauded. She had spent almost a year building her purification system after severe flooding contaminated drinking wells throughout our county. While most children returned to school once the floodwaters disappeared, Emma kept asking why clean water took weeks to reach small communities. She began collecting discarded camping filters, broken coffee machines, recycled tubing, and inexpensive filtration materials. Our garage slowly transformed into a miniature laboratory. Night after night, she tested samples, failed, started again, improved another design, repeated the process. Eventually, she created a portable purifier that produced safe drinking water using components costing less than $40. Scientists from the foundation couldn't believe a middle school student had developed something so effective with so few resources. When they announced her name as the national winner, I cried harder than she did. Nathan applauded, but I recognized the expression hidden beneath his smile. His oldest son had entered the same competition with an expensive project assembled largely by private tutors. He received an honorable mention. Emma walked away with the championship. Nathan congratulated her in front of the cameras. The second the cameras disappeared, so did his enthusiasm. At dinner, every child received a beautifully printed menu. Every child, except Emma. She waited patiently. When the waiter reached her chair, Nathan casually raised one finger. Not that one. The waiter hesitated. I'm sorry? Nathan leaned back in his chair. We only confirmed meals for everyone else. I frowned. That's impossible. I opened my phone and pulled up the confirmation email I had sent nearly a month earlier. It clearly listed 2 reservations, mine and Emma's. Nathan barely glanced at the screen. Then someone must have made a mistake. The waiter looked uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. He checked his tablet twice before quietly excusing himself. A few minutes later, he returned carrying a wrapped sandwich purchased from the staff cafeteria downstairs. My mother barely looked away from her wine. You should always bring snacks for children, she said. They're not picky. Emma looked at the sandwich, then at everyone else's plates. Finally, she whispered, It's okay, Mom. That sentence broke something inside me. Not because she was hungry, because she'd already learned the lesson my family had been trying to teach us for years. Make yourself smaller. Don't create problems. Accept whatever you're given. I wasn't angry about a sandwich. I was angry because Nathan wanted my daughter to understand that no award, no accomplishment, no amount of hard work would ever earn her equal treatment inside this family. Until that moment, I intended to hand my audit directly to my father after dinner. Privately, quietly. I wanted to protect the company's employees, its reputation, its clients. I wanted Nathan to have one final opportunity to resign before anyone else discovered what I'd found. Then Emma asked me something so softly only I could hear it. Mom, can I eat in the hallway? I don't want everyone looking at me. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. No, I smiled. You're staying right here. Then I looked at my brother. Understood. Across the table, Nathan smiled back. He thought he'd won. He had absolutely no idea that, before the night was over, everything he had spent 20 years building was about to collapse. The silence after my last words felt heavier than the crystal chandelier hanging above our table. Nathan leaned back in his chair and laughed. You always did have a flair for drama, Claire. A few relatives chuckled politely, not because they thought he was funny, because that's what everyone had learned to do whenever Nathan spoke. Agreeing with him was easier than questioning him. I remained standing. The waiter quietly stepped away, sensing something had shifted. Across the table, Emma looked up at me with worried eyes. I gave her a small smile, hoping she wouldn't notice how fast my heart was beating. This wasn't how I'd planned tonight. For months, I'd promised myself the company's employees wouldn't pay the price for one man's arrogance. I intended to present my findings privately to my father, give him time to act responsibly, and avoid turning a family celebration into a public reckoning. Then, Nathan decided humiliating a 12-year-old was more important than pretending to be decent. That changed everything. The event coordinator opened the dining room doors. 3 members of Donovan Environmental Solutions Board walked inside, followed by the company's outside legal counsel, Rebecca Lawson. Nathan's smile faded. He looked toward my father. Dad, what's this? My father looked just as confused. I thought the meeting was tomorrow. Rebecca set a locked document case on an empty chair. It was, she replied evenly. Miss Donovan requested that we move it forward. Nathan looked at me. You arranged this? I arranged for the truth to arrive on time. The room fell silent again. My mother finally spoke. Claire, whatever disagreement you and your brother are having, this isn't the place. It stopped being a family disagreement months ago. Nathan folded his arms. So this is about Emma's sandwich? No. It's about choices. I looked around the room. Tonight was simply the first time everyone else got to see the kind of choices Nathan makes when he thinks no one important is watching. He rolled his eyes. For heaven's sake, Claire, it was a catering mistake. Before I could answer, the banquet manager stepped forward from the back of the room. I'm sorry, she said quietly, but it wasn't. Every head turned. Nathan's jaw tightened. The manager continued carefully. Mr. Donovan personally emailed us this morning requesting one revision to the seating plan. She unfolded a printed email. He instructed us to remove Miss Emma Donovan's dinner reservation. The room became so quiet I could hear silverware clink against a plate somewhere across the hall. Nathan immediately stood. That's ridiculous. The manager didn't argue. She simply handed Rebecca the printed email. Rebecca glanced at the timestamp. Then she handed it to my father. His expression changed almost instantly. You sent this? Nathan didn't answer. Instead, he looked at me. You've been planning this. For 5 months. His face hardened. So that's why you've been asking accounting for old project files. I wasn't asking. I was auditing. Nathan laughed again, but there was no confidence left in it. You don't even work for this company anymore. No. I work for people who hire me when they think someone inside their company has stopped telling the truth. My father slowly lowered the printed email. Claire? What exactly have you found? I looked at Emma. She still hadn't touched the sandwich. I closed the leather portfolio resting beneath my chair. I found enough that this dinner won't be remembered for a catering decision. I paused. It'll be remembered as the night Donovan Environmental Solutions stopped pretending everything was fine. Nathan took one step toward me. If you think you're destroying everything our family built because you're still bitter about the past? The past? I interrupted calmly. No, Nathan. This is about the last 5 months. I placed my hand on the portfolio and every document inside it. For the first time in my life, my brother looked genuinely afraid. Nathan stared at the leather portfolio beneath my hand as though he could somehow see through it. Then he smiled. Not because he was confident, because smiling had always been his first line of defense. Claire, he said, shaking his head, you've built an entire career looking for problems. If you dig deep enough, every company has paperwork that isn't perfect. I didn't answer him. Instead, I looked toward Rebecca. She unlocked the document case and began placing several sealed folders onto the table. The sound alone seemed to change the room. One by one, conversations from nearby tables faded until all anyone could hear was paper sliding across polished wood. My father looked from the folders to me. You've already shown this to the board? I showed them enough to justify tonight's meeting. Nathan laughed. So that's it? Some accounting errors? No. I met his eyes. It's much worse than accounting. Rebecca handed a copy of the first report to every board member. The title alone was enough to make Nathan's smile disappear. Independent Internal Compliance Review, prepared at the request of the chairman. My father slowly removed his reading glasses from his jacket pocket. You asked for an outside review? Nathan asked him. No, my father replied quietly. I asked Claire. Nathan looked back at me. You've been spying on your own family. I've been protecting the company, he scoffed. From me? I nodded once. Yes. A long silence settled over the room. Finally, I opened my portfolio. Inside were dozens of color-coded files, photographs, payment summaries, engineering reports, and forensic accounting charts. I removed only one document. The Riverside Restoration Project. Nathan folded his arms. Our biggest success. It should have been. I placed the document in front of him. It would have been if nearly $3 million hadn't disappeared during construction. Every face around the table froze. Nathan actually laughed. 3 million? You expect anyone here to believe that? I don't expect them to believe me. I slid another folder across the table. I expect them to read the evidence. Rebecca opened the folder. Inside were payment records stretching back nearly 2 years. Over 60 invoices, I said calmly, each approved by Nathan. My father frowned. They're consulting payments. So they appear. I pressed a button on my tablet. The large presentation screen at the front of the private dining room flickered to life. Nathan's expression changed immediately. You brought a presentation? I brought the truth. The first slide appeared. 3 consulting companies. Different names, different logos, different addresses. They all received company money. I clicked again. The addresses zoomed in. All three companies were registered to the exact same vacant office building. Several people leaned forward. One board member whispered, "That can't be right." "It is." I clicked again. Drone photographs appeared. The building had been abandoned for nearly 4 years. Broken windows, boarded entrances, no employees, no equipment, no business. Yet Donovan Environmental Solutions had paid those three companies millions of dollars for environmental consulting that never happened. Nathan's face hardened. "That's circumstantial." "It would have been," I answered, "if I'd stopped there." Another click. Bank transfer diagrams filled the screen. Colored lines connected every payment. One company transferred money to another, then another. Finally, the funds arrived at a private investment company. Rebecca stood. "The beneficial owner of this investment company," she said evenly, "is Mr. Nathan Donovan." A collective gasp swept through the room. Nathan stood so quickly his chair slammed against the wall. "This is fabricated." "It isn't. You forged those records." "I didn't create them." I looked directly at him. "Your bank did." My father slowly lowered his head into his hands. "No," Nathan pointed at me. "She's trying to steal the company." I remained perfectly calm. "I'm trying to save it." The next slide appeared. Engineering inspection reports. Highlighted sections, missing signatures, altered approval dates, dozens of discrepancies. I explained each one carefully. These reports certified cleanup work that wasn't completed. Another click. These inspections were signed before the construction crews even arrived. Another. These soil samples were copied from unrelated projects. Another. And these environmental safety tests, I paused, were never performed. The room fell completely silent. Nathan looked around desperately. Someone had to defend him. Someone always did. His wife stared at the floor. My mother looked as though she couldn't breathe. Even my father couldn't meet his son's eyes. Nathan finally found his voice. "So what? So what if paperwork got rushed? No project is perfect." I looked around the room. "No project is perfect." "You're right." I picked up Emma's unopened sandwich and held it in my hand. "But this," I said quietly, "isn't about mistakes." I set the sandwich beside the audit reports. It's about someone who believes cutting corners is acceptable as long as someone else pays the price. I turned toward my daughter. Tonight, that someone was Emma. I looked back at Nathan. For years, it was employees, clients, taxpayers, and anyone who trusted your signature. Nathan's confidence was gone. For the first time in his life, the room wasn't listening to him anymore. They were listening to the evidence, and I had only revealed the beginning. The room stayed silent long after the presentation ended. Nathan looked from one face to another, searching for someone, anyone to defend him. No one did. Then he did what he'd always done when the truth cornered him. He blamed me. "She's jealous," he shouted. "She walked away from this company years ago because she couldn't handle success." I smiled sadly. "No, Nathan. I left because you made sure I had no choice." I opened one final folder. Inside were digital forensic reports proving that years earlier, Nathan had altered engineering files, forged internal emails, and claimed one of my biggest research projects as his own. The evidence also showed he had quietly sabotaged my career to protect his position inside the company. Before Nathan could interrupt, a voice spoke from the back of the room. "I believe her." It was my younger cousin, Ryan, one of the company's senior project managers. He admitted Nathan had pressured employees for years to approve incomplete reports and stay silent about safety concerns. One by one, 2 more managers stood and shared similar experiences. My father's shoulders slumped. For the first time, he wasn't looking at his successful eldest son. He was looking at a stranger. Without saying another word, he removed the company chairman's access card from Nathan's jacket pocket and placed it on the table. "You're suspended?" He said quietly. Nathan stared at him in disbelief. "You can't be serious. I should have done this years ago." Security arrived moments later. As they escorted Nathan toward the exit, he turned back one last time, expecting someone in the family to stop them. No one moved. Emma gently slipped her hand into mine. For the first time that night, neither of us felt invisible. 3 months later, the investigation was complete. Every major finding in my audit had been confirmed. Millions of dollars had been hidden through fake consulting contracts, inflated environmental reports, and shell companies controlled by Nathan. Public agencies launched their own investigations, and the board unanimously voted to terminate him for cause. He lost his executive position. He lost the luxury home he'd purchased with diverted funds. His professional engineering license was suspended pending disciplinary action. Even his marriage collapsed after his wife discovered years of financial deception. Some relatives insisted I had gone too far. Others quietly admitted they had suspected something was wrong, but had been too afraid to speak. I stopped worrying about who agreed with me. The truth didn't need a popularity vote. The company appointed an experienced outside CEO who had no family ties. New financial controls were introduced. Independent safety inspections became mandatory, and employees were encouraged to report concerns without fear of retaliation. For the first time in years, people weren't working in fear. As for me, I never returned to the family business. I had already built a career based on integrity, and I wasn't willing to trade that for a title. Emma continued developing her water purification system with researchers from a local university. Months later, several disaster relief organizations began testing improved versions of her invention in flood-prone communities. Watching her confidence grow meant more to me than any executive office ever could. My parents slowly accepted responsibility for the role they had played. They apologized, not just for believing Nathan's lies, but for remaining silent whenever he humiliated others. Trust didn't return overnight, but this time it was rebuilt with honesty instead of excuses. Nearly a year after that dinner, Emma and I visited the same waterfront hall where everything had changed. We ate lunch in the small cafe overlooking the river. She smiled when she noticed sandwiches on the menu. "Want to share one?" she asked. I laughed. "Only if that's what you really want." She nodded. "It's just a sandwich, Mom." The problem was never the food. I looked at her and realized she was right. Nathan had tried to make her feel small. Instead, he reminded her that dignity is something no one can take unless you hand it over. As we left the cafe, I glanced back at the building one last time. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. Because I finally understood something I wish I'd learned years earlier. Keeping a family together by protecting lies doesn't create peace. It only teaches the innocent to accept humiliation. Real loyalty isn't covering for the person who causes the harm. It's having the courage to protect the person being harmed, even when telling the truth changes everything. That night didn't destroy my family. It exposed the cracks we'd spent years pretending weren't there. And the moment I stopped protecting someone else's deception, my daughter learned she would never have to shrink herself just to make other people comfortable.